this show to explain how certain technologies work and how companies can apply them in their strategies, and also how to overcome certain challenging situations we're facing today during this COVID-19 lockdown. What we're going to speak about today is cybersecurity and how to keep hackers away. My name is Yelena-Ganshof. I'm a producer and host of Inside Tomorrow and a founder of Brand Boosting and Viva. And a special guest who is coming to our studio today is Paul Wang. Paul, welcome to Inside Tomorrow. Paul is a cybersecurity advisor. He is a head of corporate governance of Geneva Micro Labs. And Paul is constantly teaching and lecturing about cybersecurity. Welcome to Inside Tomorrow.
Thank you very much, Yelena.
So, Paul, during this lockdown, I know, and before we're going to start the whole discussion, I would like to share my personal story of what happened. A few weeks ago, one of my social media accounts have been hacked out of the blue, and I shouldn't message to my IT who said, okay, wait, maybe they're going to send an email asking for something, for money, for attention. I don't know what. Maybe they just want attention to show up their IT skills looking for a job. I have no idea. And while I was waiting, I was also searching online, trying to find a solution, and I found another account of myself. It was a fake account online, like I am trading crypto. It was trade with Yelena, and many pictures, all the pictures, they were taken from my hacked account. I was like, oh, how interesting that is. And at that moment, I said to myself, okay, it's time to educate myself and my community, how to keep our data safe, how to keep our social media accounts safe, especially during this time of a lockdown when many of us, pretty much everyone, working in this digital space on video conferencing, on Zoom, Skype, Microsoft, Teams app, Google Hangouts, you name it. We're constantly online and leaving certain traces. How to keep our data safe. So, Paul, how can you describe the situation today? Has there been any rise in in the cyber crime, and what's happening in this space?
Yeah, thank you very much, Yelena, for this opportunity. Yeah, your experience actually I would say, unfortunate experience show how cybersecurity or cybercrime is still evolving. And last year, we saw quite a number of challenges due to the exponential usage of emerging technologies in the wider community. First, from the individual home users, homeowners employing, for example, surveillance monitoring systems, smart devices, the deployment of Internet of Things, and up to the industries which they automate their systems. And nowadays, more and more corporations automate their critical infrastructures. And you probably remember, back from last year and probably the years before, the Google Home smart speakers, as well as the Amazon Alexa, who were hacked to eavesdrop on those devices' conversations. So, you know, the way to actually perform some of the hacking is by sending laser-powered light commands to those devices and potentially unlock smart doors. Everything which is smart connected nowadays, connected like cars, garage doors, or even the fridge, could be actually shut down or automated. You can actually send orders to those Amazon Alexa. You can send orders to Google Home devices in order for them to carry an operation or carry an activity or carry an action. So if hackers or cyber criminals are able to access those smart connected devices, they can disrupt from simple things to massive hazard things, or even having a power electrical shortage. So that's from an individual perspective. And probably you may recall the story last year about the Ring camera. The Ring, which is actually a company that is being bought by Amazon. Those Ring have been designed to provide a better privacy and also security for the users. So they are usually meant to monitor the homes and make them safer. So Ring is only one example among other connected cameras which may represent weaknesses or may leak sensitive information if they are not properly secured. And nowadays we're talking also about NFC, the near field communication technologies, where everybody has a bank card, has a credit card, has a card that has NFC activated. There are lots of debate related to where by default to deactivate it. So some of my friends even they are asking their banks not to activate their NFC. But nowadays all the credit cards, all the bank cards, they come with this NFC. So it's easy, and especially in this time of the pandemic situation, everybody is using close contact payment, remote payment. And obviously it gives opportunities, unfortunately, to cyber criminals to access, because to access sensitive information in those NFC cards. So to protect, for example, one example, to protect those NFC cards, they are like deactivators, those kind of things that can actually deactivate or can protect your cards. Those are the protecting your cards by putting like a container, putting like a field which prevents sensors to get information. So obviously, to a larger scale, there have been increasingly attacks against individuals, but against also operators, against cloud data centers, and also the internet exchange. Now, from a broader scale perspective, the critical infrastructure is also something which is at high risk, because everybody is using electricity, everybody is using power. If you have no power, you have nothing. You have no power, you have no internet. So the targeted systems are like electrical power systems, dams, even nuclear sites, which have been highly targeted and exposed. Those critical infrastructure nowadays, they are heavily automated. They have different systems that are just interconnected to each other, from sensors, Internet of Things, from other appliances that are all interconnected. So obviously, to protect all the interconnected devices, it's difficult, but it also it gives the opportunity for a cyber criminal to actually shut down the critical infrastructure, and you can imagine the terrible consequences on the entire area if suddenly there's no power. If there's no power, there's no video conference, there's nothing, there's no communication anyway. Mm-hmm. And nowadays, you were talking about the pandemic situation, the COVID-19 situation. It unfortunately gives the cyber criminals the opportunity to exploit the current situation. And what to do? Because they want to lure the population online and also offline. Nowadays, more than 4 billion of people have been locked down at their home, and the vast majority has not gone to work. Almost instantly. You can ask the question whether corporations are actually ready to face this dilemma: privacy, health, business, money, economy, sending their employees working from home, advising them not to go to the office for health safety. Obviously, the priority is safety, is health, so for their employees. But then obviously the employees working from home, they were and are still preoccupied with their own health, with the health safety of their families. And so the concern has been shifted to health as opposed to privacy or online security. Mm-hmm. That gives actually an open door to cyber criminals to attack even further, to attract them into malicious sites, to distribute malware, disguised, for example, as coronavirus map. You probably have heard actually in March, I think it was probably in March or April, beginning of April, there was a fake coronavirus map, which is actually the same as the Johns Hopkins ones. But so people were attracted to those sites because the cyber criminals, they work 24/7. They are just like, they have a task force which is actually humongous. They have systems which are all interconnected, And they have a way to set up to steal sensitive data such as usernames, password, banking information, credit card numbers, as well as sensitive information. So,
So
you know,
what would be for you? What would be the core tips or advice for many of us working remotely? And as I believe that many people will continue working remotely even after the lockdown is lifted.
correct.
The big tech companies have already announced, oh, our employees can continue working from Twitter, from many other companies. And many other companies that I hear here in Switzerland, of course, the employees will continue, at least certain part of the team will continue working remotely from home. It means because cybersecurity is also health hygiene of the company.
Correct. Correct.
Right.
So first and foremost, the corporations who are advising their employees to stay at home, they are responsible for providing all necessary equipment, infrastructure to allow them to work the same way as if they were in the office. So that's actually a first principle. Obviously, during this pandemic situations, the corporations were not ready. They were just not ready to face that situation, having shifting entirely an office to a home. Just actually, companies are not prepared. If they have not been prepared from a prevention perspective, then when it happens, say a lockdown, nobody goes, everybody stays at home. They're saying, okay, God, how do we do that? So working from home should, in theory, mean that you do office work. You need to apply the same principles, the same measures, the same security measures and guidelines as if you were in the office. You need to respect privacy. You need to respect security. There are many factors. But obviously, the home and the office is just actually a location. It's a location, whether it's home or office. So when you're at home, whenever you are connected to an internet service provider, you are depending on the security of your internet service provider. You are managing your own responsibility at home, your home network responsibility with regards to your service provider, with regards to your equipment. Whereas actually in the office, your employer, he's responsible for providing a secure environment. So that's first and foremost, the connectivity. Second aspect is actually your device, with which you are using at home, whether it's a personal device or an office supplied device. So all the different devices that are connected to your home connection, they need to be secure depending on the usage. It's for family, fun, for kids, for your spouse, etc. So as a last minute, people, corporations, as well as employees, they had to find solution, as I indicated before, because the employer was not ready. So many corporations, if not the vast majority of them, were not ready. So only, unfortunately, cyber criminals are ready to act and attack immediately. So if you're talking about guidelines, you're explaining about guidelines, I usually indicate 3 important principles that are valid whether you are at home, in a hotel, in the office, or anywhere. Prevent, detect, and respond. So those are the 3 systems or paradigm, the principle that I usually apply. How to prevent? Usually you need to update your appliance, starting from your computers, your routers, apply the latest verified patches and firmware. You change the default passwords, which are usually configured by default by the manufacturer. If you go on, there's a website called Shodan website. The default passwords allow people to often view your home devices. You need to apply the latest antivirus. All those features, it's actually from a prevention perspective. If you have done that already at the beginning, even working from the office, that means your home is already secure in a certain way. You don't need to apply at the last minute because you've done it in the past at the beginning. Then second is activate your home wireless encryption, the WPA2, PSK, or better if the WPA3 is available. The encryption constitutes the highest protection against cyber criminals. So if you already applied encryption, you don't necessarily need to change the way of working as if you're from home. Obviously, for cybersecurity people, enthusiasts like you, like me, or like other professionals, we are used to this way of working from home already, so it doesn't change from a practical perspective and also from a philosophical perspective. The other prevention, which is also applicable for everyone working wherever, is identify suspicious emails, suspicious links, suspicious applications, suspicious downloads that may be friends or friends from friends or so-called friends, virtual friends, have sent you or have forwarded you, as they may contain malicious software or refer to contaminated sites. Whenever you are in doubt, whether it's coming from your friend, from your colleague, from the bank, from your employer, especially from your employer, if they ask you for your credentials, you call them, you ask them. Don't send an email back. If you're not able to verify the authenticity of an email of a certain source or of a link, call the person and ask, oh, I received something weird. Is it really coming from you? Rather than to say, okay, well, I'd like to investigate. Maybe I check, maybe I verify. Because, I mean, cyber criminals, they have way of changing totally that make you believe. It's true that in this current pandemic situation, you are drawn to keep your home safe. You are drawn to keep your parents, your family members, your kids healthy. So your priority has diverged into keeping everyone healthy, having food, having the necessary groceries, rather than keeping the security. But if you've done all the security measures as a prevention perspective, you don't really have to take care of those aspects as a last minute. So that's the reason why people have been facing like tons and tons of like phishing attacks, spams, etc., because they said, oh, something new, but nothing has changed actually. But obviously people, whenever they're facing reality of what's happening outside, they lose traction of the security measures. They lose traction about privacy. They are ready to do anything to get cheap masks, to get cheap PPE equipment, to get cheap testing devices, or even some which are fake ones, because they say, oh, I heard about this treatment. I want to take maybe nicotine because apparently someone published that nicotine is actually healthier and there are less people contaminated because they are actually smokers. I mean, those things are not proven. And until they are proven, you just actually keep your, level of criticism very high and keep your actually Zen attitude, I will say, to a maximum level to guarantee your safety and also your privacy. The second paradigm I was talking about is detect. So you need to add a firewall capability at your home. You need to define zones within your home network, just as is similar in the office. You may define like a private zone, a home private zone, professional zone, only for professional usage working from home, and then a public zone for guests. You need to remove like extra unused services which may represent higher security risk, like a video gaming or other actually services. You should always remember that you use only what is necessary and block the rest. And those principles should stay the same. You need to use VPN even at home. I mean, whenever you are at a hotel, let's say you're working from the hotel, obviously whenever you connect to your office, you use a VPN. It's the same principle that you need to adopt whenever you're working from home. Use a VPN.
Basically to use the office VPN home.
Yes, exactly. So you need to also store data on an encrypted network drive. So the same principle. And whenever you're actually using devices at home, you need to classify those devices as authorized and non-authorized. You only list computers which are allowed on your home network, like your spouse computers, your kids' computer. You use like MAC address filters. And to do that, you can refer to the manufacturer's website. They provide sufficient principles and guidelines. And worst case, you ask the corporation or employer for assistance. And the last one, the third one, is respond. Whenever you are getting hit, like because of a malicious website or a virus or malware, you need to minimize the consequences, and then you should actually contain. You should confine. You should first terminate the connection, remove, scan, ask your organization how to secure your home, and check and test once, twice, several times before you get back on the internet. So those are the three principles. So the protect, prevent, detect, and then respond. And initially, you were talking about the video conferencing. Obviously, that's a very hot topic. I mean, as a principle, as I said at the beginning, whatever is online can potentially be listened, can potentially be copied, misused, etc. So apply a minimum security baseline. If privacy is a real concern, then don't use video conferencing. I mean, Zoom is only one example among other examples. I mean, Citrix, video conferencing obviously is getting a lot of tractions. Fundamentally, the minimum security setting needs to be maintained. When I was indicating VPN 2 minutes ago, everyone who needs to be connected to a video conference application should probably use VPN tunneling. Of course, the bandwidth can be an issue if you have like hundreds or thousands of people getting connected, and if everybody is using the VPN to go through that tunnel to protect what is being discussed through the video conferencing, I mean, efficiency will be actually diminished. But to maintain efficiency, do you actually need a video? Obviously, to see your colleague is better because you're used to seeing your colleague. But if you want to maintain actually a discussion and that everybody is active on discussion, actually close off the video and mute people who are not actually using the channel. I mean, there are some like principles that you can use just in normal circumstances. Whenever actually you want to guarantee the privacy, you need to maintain actually a certain level of security. And so if you don't need like 300 people's pictures just to take a funny pictures of so many people who are actually participating to the video conferencing, yeah. I mean, that's the good side of it. But if you don't need that, just actually close it. Another serious concern related to video conferencing related to privacy and consent, because, does actually each of the participants who participate to that video conference give actually a consent about access to confidential information, about the face, about publication? I'm pretty sure a lot have, but also a lot, whenever you see all those video conferencing snapshots that people have done, that have been published on social media, I'm 100% sure that the people who have been, the faces of the people who have been published, some of them didn't provide their consent, right?
Good point, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's a privacy thing. If someone, let's say a cyber criminal wants to attract someone, he will look, oh, there's a name of the person. I see the name, there's a face. Oh, I may replicate the face. I may misuse the face. I may capture the face and then change it and then publish it and then use that as actually rebouncing for phishing attacks. So that's why giving consent, what to record, not record. I mean, it's true that people were attracted to this new mode of communication, so they just went to, without actually thinking of the probably bad consequences afterwards. So that's also a paradigm and adoption that you need to do, and to ask everyone consent. And referring to the video conferencing, I gave a class to cybersecurity class end of March online using video conferencing application and with specific guidelines. I was asking everyone to shut down their camera just for efficiency purposes. I was asking everyone also to give consent to recording purposes, because some of the participants who were not attending online class, they wanted actually to be having recorded. So I asked everyone to sign off before I did the class. So that's something that you need to educate. So you were discussing about education. You need to educate people whenever they are going online. It's not before, it's not now, it's not after, it's permanent. It's not because we now are facing a crisis that we need to increase the awareness. The security awareness should be consistent, should be constant. It's true that cyber criminals, they take this pandemic situation to lure people into like the emotion, into the giving, donation. It's very simple because you are attracted to help. You are attracted to keep healthy. So obviously you will give a little bit more. One last item I want to mention is about the contact tracing. I mean, everybody's talking about contact tracing. Obviously, all the different countries are using different technologies. One of the criticisms related to that, or one of the aspects, is privacy. Do people give consent about using the contact tracing? Are they sufficiently aware of the risks related to contact tracing? What's the consequences? Who are going to use it? And we have different organizations, I mean, within Geneva Macro Labs, within actually ICON, the NGO, where I'm also advisor over there, or within ImmuniWeb, where I'm also a cybersecurity advisor. We're talking about how to educate people, how to entrust also, and how to empower individuals to be more self-responsible whenever they use something. Do they know the consequences, or are they just giving out free? Say, oh, I want to help, so I'm ready to use it. No, I'm not ready to use it. Or is it actually all the cybersecurity features already built into the systems or built into the smart devices already? So that's actually a way of thinking. Education is very, very important. Education before, education during, and education after, lessons learned. And awareness. So at home, working from home, you need to educate your spouse, you need to educate your kids about how to trust. Is it actually a friend? Your friend is sending you homework. Okay, make sure that it's really your friend sending a homework, not a specific link. Is your teacher. So it's getting complicated, but it's all a part of education. You know, in a company, you have the tone from the top, from the CEO, from the managing director, who educates people how to work safely and securely. From home, as parents, you need to provide guidelines, also tone from the top. So it's the same way of education. Yeah. Nothing has really changed, but it's only because of the crisis time, things are going super fast, too fast to maintain a minimum security baseline.
Yeah, education here is the key. And I believe that what's happening, we get educated as of the situation today. Mm-hmm. The hackers get educated as well, and they find new ways. They educate themselves constantly. So it means that we need to have constant education on the company level, on the school level, for children, for adults, for everyone in this digital space, because we are inside tomorrow, basically. And what you have mentioned, that of course our attention has changed during the lockdown to the health issues, to coronavirus, how to keep ourselves safe physically on the health level, and people probably paid less attention, especially working remotely, being at home and receiving. Just before I received a phishing email from Apple, pretended to be Apple. Everyone I pretend to be Amazon, I pretend to be PayPal, I pretend to be Apple or whatever else. And I think that when you receive an email saying, oh, thank you for the purchase, you made this purchase, if you would like to appeal to this purchase, click here, and the purchase is from Apple. And people could be busy resolving their health issues, and they just click, and all of a sudden they realize, oh my God, that was a hack. It took us somewhere else. So the hacker got in touch and got a hold of the email. So I think that what you had mentioned before, some of the tips, is that the two-factor verification is compulsory. It's just a foundation.
Correct. It's the foundation. It's really the foundation.
I believe that we need to treat our social media accounts as our banking accounts.
We need to, because, you know, almost everything which is online, I mean, social media is one among others. Everything which is online, like even information that you post, whether on social media or elsewhere, is potentially exposed and vulnerable. So that this is actually a principle that I usually adopt. So whatever is published online, being an account, like you mentioned, a bank account, and information could be potentially be forged, modified, deleted, captured by others, misused, whether they are for authentic purposes or disgruntled. So impersonation of like famous individuals, stars, actors, or even organizations, well-known politicians, personalities, such as, for example, now in the world pandemic situation, the World Health Organization, medical doctors. You know, the objective is really to an attempt to lure and also persuade victims to either click on a dangerous contaminated link, to download maybe a malicious software, or just to donate money to bogus causes. I mean, during the COVID-19 pandemic situation, you have seen tons and tons, like millions, trillions of actually fake information, fake websites. Cyber criminals, they never stop. They don't hesitate to imitate public institutions such as UK government, the CDC, US officials, the NHS, or government authorities. I mean, as I mentioned, cyber threat never dies, and even worse, there's a surge of cyber threats. There was Barracuda Networks. They performed an analysis, a survey indicating an increase of something like close to 700% increase of malicious phishing attacks during the pandemic situation. You know, actually, the phishing activities, they never ceased. I mean, phishing techniques never change. I mean, it's always the same techniques. The phishing attacks, they employ intelligently and emotion, now the pandemic situation, and they take opportunity, especially when those victims, right now, they are preoccupied with their life, and they don't think necessarily of the consequences. They are willing to do everything possible to survive, to get money, to get help, to get medical equipment, even cheap ones or fake ones, or even donate their own personal credentials and their personal sensitive information. So nowadays, I mean, in the crisis, especially during the crisis, trust is a concern. Trust has always been a concern in the cyberspace, but trust has become one of the highest aspects in this pandemic situation. You're talking about fake news. You're talking about fake accounts. The problem now is how you can trust an information, how you can trust actually an account that has sent you important information about pandemic situation, even about your doctor. Is it actually really from a legitimate account? So to better probably secure those accounts, some people tend to use, the @real personality, real ABC, sir, to distinguish from another rogue account. Some people say maybe that's sufficient. Some other people are saying it's not sufficient. So for the general population, you need to actively search through the origins of an information. Whenever you are in doubt, as I was mentioning before, you call the person to ask, rather than instantly think it is coming from a friend, it is coming from a colleague, it is coming from my boss, because there's a tremendous amount of real as well as fake, like treatment indication, how to fight COVID-19. There's a lot of incorrect
lots of fake news,
yes.
On this one.
And some apparently arising also from doctors, some really from medical doctors, and some from well-known individuals. I remember you received today from Apple. I remember receiving information that some of my friends sent me related to a so-called statement from the Nobel Prize Japanese professor Tazuko Honjo. I think 2 weeks ago, he allegedly stated that the coronavirus was not actually natural source. This information has been spread on the media. This false quote has been luckily refuted by him the day after, but unfortunately news has already spread and the general population take it for granted. So usually, as a principle, as a methodology as well, instead of spreading fake and potentially dangerous information, the principle is to verify the source and ask. And there are several organizations around the world, from the community, from the European community, from Europol, from other institutions, non-private institutions like public institutions or non-governmental institutions are working towards the verification of information sources in the wider community in order to share it. And over the past 2 months, I was participating to several hackathons to fight the COVID-19. And among some of the aspects were actually really trust and fake news. Say, how do we authenticate them? How do we verify them? What to do? How to govern? How to provide a specific governance? How to provide education? How to make sure that, whenever you remove one fake data source, there are obviously 100 new ones that are coming afterwards. But it's really a matter of education, because spreading fake news increases the anxiety. And people, whenever they are anxious, they are ready to do anything. And for the general publication relying on big private players, for some it's sufficient, for others it's not. I want to take one example. Google is claiming that using artificial intelligence and machine learning tools can actually block more than 99.9% of emails from reaching its users. I truly believe that these technologies can help. They are meant to help. But in any case, what is very important is really your self-responsibility, your self-awareness, and also making other people aware of the risks. And those are actually my key principles.
Yeah, so basically, always verify the information. If something's suspicious, always double check if it's a fake or not, especially in the phishing emails. If you have a link, if you can still, I guess, copy and paste that link separately in the browser.
Verify the link, yes.
Verify. Message that person separately, not as a response, but separately to make sure that is the message from this particular person. And you mentioned about VPN, and of course, we need to educate ourselves constantly. So the question here is, how do you see the situation 5-10 years from now? You mentioned here already built-in cyber security systems in our devices. Maybe you can tell more about it.
So privacy or security by design is a word. Privacy by design is one term, and also security by design is also another term, which has been discussed and debated for years already. It's not new. Whenever you design a system, you need to empower the designer to implement security by default. You need to empower the manufacturer and to make sure that there's a certification, an independent certification authority or an independent certification body that will validate that such design is actually secure, that such design can guarantee privacy. It's true that nowadays with the commercial downfall right now, everybody is actually actively looking for money, looking for investments, and cost is something which is becoming super important. But having said that, it's very important to start correct at the beginning, at the real source. So whenever you are able to ensure with a certification body to ensure that privacy has been guaranteed with independent certification body or organization, then those devices can go on the market. It's just, for example, whenever you are renting a car, you need to make sure that the car is working and that it's protecting you, and you need to trust the car manufacturer. You need to trust actually the person who's renting you the car. It's the same thing. Whenever you use a new device, the new device is providing a certain warranty, a certain guarantee about how secure it is. Because cyber criminals, cybersecurity threats will always be there. Always be there. So in 5 years, in 10 years, there will be new cybersecurity actually weaknesses. I always say that cyber criminals are not one step, two, but even 3 steps ahead of us, ahead of the good guys, I would say. And it's a little bit like the chicken and egg. Who comes first and what comes first? Is the virus, and then the antivirus is the virus, and then the antibiotics. It's always like a war game on that. So whenever you are able to prevent, you design at the beginning, it won't stop the cyber criminals from misusing it, for sure, of actually decrypting it or finding weaknesses. That's the good thing of it. Whenever there's a weaknesses found, obviously there's a repairing, there's a patch. That's also the reason why there are patches that are being deployed every now and then on all the kinds of applications, whether they're on Android, on Apple devices, same thing. There are patches because it's meant to evolve. And then before actually getting connected, we're talking about quantum computing. That's obviously another subject.
That's interesting. Yeah.
But quantum computing, nowadays people are developing quantum computing, and quantum computing can actually break into passwords. So obviously passwords that needed like hours or days to crack using quantum computing, it's going to reduce the time by a factor of like say 10, 100, or even actually more. So that's why changing the paradigm, you need to always be thinking, say, how do I design something in order to be resilient afterwards, to be resilient next year, to be resilient next week, to be resilient next month. So education starts from it's really the first step. And then using a device. Do I buy a new device? Do I buy a new phone? Do I buy a new computer? Do I download an application before actually verifying that the application is actually safe? Before I reverse engineer? Obviously, reverse engineer, I mean, you need to be like highly technical to be able to reverse engineer, but there are people doing it. There are organizations doing it as well. So, and from a control perspective, and maybe that's one of the aspects which is also becoming very important from a controls perspective. Do you give the authority to a private organization to actually control and certify its own device, or do you ask actually an external certification body, an NGO, or another international organization to verify that systems is actually secure before it's being deployed? So it's a little bit of changing the paradigm. Some people are trying to enforce it so that security by design is actually the key thing before something is being spread, is being commercialized.
Okay. I like what you said about the bad guys, because they are a few steps in front. So
Correct.
it means that we need to have our good guys being 10 steps ahead, or being extremely close to the bad guys, to always find ways to correct our pathways so that business can follow in a safe way, in a very IT hygiene way,
Correct.
and secure the data. And education, I believe, is a key. It's a subject in every school, in every class, because our children, they grow playing video games, and they constantly in digital. And this is a future generation.
And maybe one also very important aspect is that, fortunately, we're still humans, and humans think differently, and luckily think differently than machines. So, and now in this pandemic situation, everyone is thinking about humans, how to help others. We're thinking of like global community. I mean, independent of nationality, independent of territory. I mean, the last hackathon I participated, there were like 40,000 people participating to it. And from wherever the people were, from whatever origin, you don't really care. You are working towards the same objective, to help for the community. So unfortunately, I mean, this current crisis has brought a lot of people talking to each other, more wiser than running into competition. That's also the purpose of hackathon. The hackathon, obviously, in the old days, the hackathon were for hackers. You know, the hackathon were actually for hackers to break into systems or to find vulnerabilities. But now, today, the hackathon actually has diverged a little bit in order to help to fight, I mean, this invisible virus, the COVID-19, in order to find solutions, to help the community, to help the economy, to help tourism, to help the medical doctors, to help finding treatment, really to help. So, I mean, the way people are working nowadays, thanks also to telecommunication, thanks to video conferencing, you are using this technology towards help. One of the advantages of those hackathon, I'm not making any publicity about hackathon because they are non-for-profit anyway, but is that using those video conferencing solutions to be able to exchange ideas. Those ideas are public ideas. They are for non-profit purposes. They are to help. So whenever there are people listening to it, great. They can reuse it and they can maintain it. They can actually expand it and they can actually enforce it or make it better. The good thing about exchanging ideas and during crisis is really to say, oh, this company or this country has learned the bad way. So how do we learn from that country? How do we learn from others who have been suffering 2 weeks before, 3 weeks before, who have been victim of a ransomware, who have been victim from a cybercrime attack. How do we learn? So exchanging that information, exchanging the best practice is also one way of actually getting better together. I mean, whenever I say together we are stronger, is really together we are stronger, and we need to work towards actually a community to fight against cybercrime, to fight against those kind of coronavirus crisis.
Yeah, good point about fighting this and exchanging the good practices, as we're right now exchanging the good practices, looking for coronavirus treatment, right? Many different labs and biotech companies, they can exchange their practice, their experience to find it faster. And I think it's the same. We're speaking again about the virus and hacking attacks.
Exactly.
Where, for those who have questions and didn't have a chance to answer, to ask here, who might see our discussion and recording, how can people reach out to you and ask questions? Maybe they have some specific questions.
Well, either on Tweet. I mean, they can tweet me. I mean, my tweet account is Paul_Wang_GVA. That's my tweet account, and otherwise on LinkedIn, which is HTTPS.
They can see that you will be tagged. You will be tagged here.
Right.
Your name. Okay. Thank you for all your insights.
Sure.
We know we're here in the tunnel of education, continuous education, right?
Continuous education.
And if you have a chance to maybe write a short article of like tips number 1, 2, 3, 4, what to do and what not to do, that will be also, I believe, very helpful to the whole community.
I'll be pleased.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you very much, Yelena, for that opportunity. Huh?
So, thank you everyone for watching our episode. Let me just switch. Thank you for watching us, and stay tuned to our next episode. Is going to be next week, and we're going to speak about artificial intelligence. Very close to probably this episode as well. So, but it will be with a company called Visium from EPFL, located in Lausanne. That's going to be really, really interesting. So stay tuned. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.